Can an ordinary man without power or army defy an entire kingdom and shut the heavens for 3 years? Elijah did just that, but his story is not merely one of miracles or resounding victories. It is the journey of a man who faced fear, found hope in stillness, and left a timeless legacy. In the 9th century BC, as the darkness of idolatry shrouded Israel, Elijah emerged from the wilderness of Gilead, carrying the fire of faith to confront the wickedness of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. But what made him a symbol of courage and loyalty, even when he was so desperate that he pleaded for death? Today we invite you to explore the story of Elijah, not just through spectacular miracles or dramatic confrontations, but through the lens of an ordinary man used by God to change history. This is not the tale you've heard 100 times in church or school. We bring you a fresh perspective, where you'll see Elijah not only as a prophet, but as a man bearing a message of justice, mercy, and the power of faith in the darkest hours. Stay until the end of this video to discover the moment when Elijah, in his weakness, heard the whisper of God and how it shaped his legacy forever. If you love inspiring Bible stories, hit the like button now, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next videos. Now join us as we step into the journey of Elijah, the prophet who shook the world. The kingdom of Israel, once radiant under Solomon's reign, now lay shrouded in the shadows of division and apostasy. After Solomon's death, the kingdom was torn in two: Judah in the south and Israel in the north, where Ahab ruled. But Ahab was no ordinary king. Scripture records him as the most wicked of all kings before him, leading the people far from their covenant with Yahweh, the God of their ancestors. When an entire nation turns its back on God, who dares to stand against its rulers? This question hung in the air like a chilling wind sweeping through Israel's barren hills, heralding an event that would shake the course of history. Ahab not only worshipped idols, but also married Jezebel, a Phoenician princess. Jezebel was more than a queen. She was the embodiment of devotion to Baal, the storm god of the Phoenicians. With ruthless zeal, she erected altars to Baal across the land, transforming lush meadows into sites of pagan worship, where swirling incense rose to stone and wooden idols. The prophets of Yahweh, keepers of the true-face flame, were hunted and slaughtered. Their blood stained the earth, crying out from valleys and hills. Yet God was not silent. Amid the chaos, he chose a man to bear his word, a man whose name would echo through the ages: Elijah, meaning, "My God is Yahweh." Jezebel, with her commanding allure, controlled not only the palace but also the hearts of the people. She ordered a temple to Baal built in Samaria, Israel's capital, as a direct challenge to God. The people, swept up in the allure of pagan rituals, gradually forgot the sacred covenant their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, had made with Yahweh. They raised pillars to Asherah, Baal's consort goddess, and bowed before lifeless wooden statues. But in the darkness of this decline, a light began to dawn from the hills of Gilead, where a simple man, without power or prestige, prepared to step into history. Could an ordinary man confront a fallen kingdom? The answer lay in Elijah's first steps as he left the wilderness to face Ahab. When Elijah entered the palace of Samaria, he carried no entourage or weapons, only a coarse camel hair cloak and a simple leather belt. His thick beard obscured his face, but his eyes, oh, those eyes burned like glowing coals, as if the very fire of God blazed within him. The palace of Samaria, with its gleaming marble columns and golden splendor, suddenly seemed diminished before the rugged yet commanding presence of this Tishbite. The guards, as if restrained by an unseen force, stood motionless as he passed, as though the earth itself bowed to make way for God's servant. Could a single word shut the heavens for 3 years? Elijah did just that, and that moment marked the beginning of a mission that would alter Israel's destiny. Before the throne where Ahab sat with a king's arrogance, Elijah did not bow. His voice rang out, unwavering and resolute. "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the years to come, except at my word." This was no mere prophecy. It was a challenge, an arrow shot straight into the heart of a wayward kingdom. Ahab, stunned and enraged, had no time to respond before Elijah turned and left, swift as a desert wind. The king, despite his supreme power, could not order the arrest of this man, as if an invisible hand shielded him. Outside the palace, the sky began to clear, wispy white clouds dissolving to reveal a vast, unyielding blue, signaling the start of a relentless drought. Elijah's action was more than a curse. It was a declaration that God, not Baal, ruled nature. Baal, the storm god, worshipped by the Phoenicians as the bringer of rain and life, was now directly challenged. Elijah's words were a sword slicing through the falsehood of Baal's altars, forcing the kingdom to face the truth. Only Yahweh held dominion over heaven and earth. But who was Elijah to utter such words? A humble man from Gilead, without title or army, armed only with unwavering faith and absolute obedience. As he left the palace, his footsteps marked a new divide in Israel's history, where the battle between light and darkness began. After his bold declaration, Elijah did not linger to witness the chaos his curse unleashed. An unseen voice, clear as the dawn, spoke to his soul. "Leave this place, go east, and hide by the Cherith brook, east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you." Elijah, who had just defied an entire kingdom, obeyed like a child, heading into the desert where God had prepared a refuge. Could a man survive in the wilderness sustained only by ravens? This question not only astonished the people of that time, but continues to challenge our imagination today. The Cherith brook, nestled among the parched rocks of the desert, became Elijah's temporary sanctuary. There he drank from its clear waters while the rest of Israel groaned under a rainless sky. Each morning, as the first rays of sunlight touched the hills, and each evening, as amber hues draped the desert, a miracle unfolded. Ravens, their feathers black as obsidian, appeared in the sky, carrying bits of bread and meat in their beaks. They perched near Elijah, laid down their offerings, and flew off into the horizon like divine messengers. These birds, deemed unclean by Mosaic law, became instruments of God's provision, a paradox that stirred Elijah to reflection. This miracle was more than physical sustenance. It was a testament to God's mercy. While the nation withered, trees died, and livestock wasted away, Elijah was nourished in a desert where life seemed impossible. Yet the miracle carried a deeper message. God could use the most unexpected, even lowly, means to fulfill his purpose. Each piece of bread brought by the ravens was a reminder that Yahweh, not Baal, was the giver of life. But this miracle was only the beginning. As the Cherith brook dwindled to a trickle, Elijah faced a new challenge, and a voice spoke again, guiding him to an unimaginable destination. As the stones of the Cherith brook emerged like small islands, Elijah knew his time there was over. The once robust stream had shrunk to a mere thread, mirroring the drought his words had foretold. Yet he did not despair. With steadfast faith, he awaited God's guidance. The word came, clear as morning light. "Arise, go to Zarephath in Sidon, and stay there. I have commanded a widow there to provide for you." Zarephath, a pagan land, the homeland of Jezebel, the queen sworn to destroy Yahweh's prophets. How could a prophet bring light to the darkest place? This question hung in the air, sparking curiosity about what lay ahead. The journey to Zarephath was grueling. The sun scorched the dry earth, and the villages Elijah passed resembled ghosts, empty cisterns, abandoned fields, and the despairing eyes of the people. At the gate of Zarephath, a frail figure appeared, a widow in tattered clothes, gathering dry sticks. Elijah's spirit stirred. He knew she was the one God had chosen. "Please bring me a little water to drink," he said. As she turned to go, he added, "And bring me a piece of bread." Her response laid bare her destitution. "As surely as your God lives, I have no bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug. I'm gathering sticks to cook a final meal for my son and me, and then we will die." The widow's words cut like a knife, reflecting the brutality of the famine Elijah had foretold. But where human eyes saw only death, the prophet's eyes saw a stage for a miracle. "Do not fear," he said, his voice carrying an authority beyond reason. "Go home and do as I say, but first make a small loaf from what you have and bring it to me, then make some for yourself and your son. For the Lord, the God of Israel, says, the jar of flour will not run out, nor the jug of oil run dry, until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. The widow looked into Elijah's eyes, and something in his gaze, perhaps the fire of faith, compelled her, in an act of irrational trust, to obey. In the humble house in Zarephath, a daily miracle unfolded. The jar of flour never emptied, and the jug of oil never ran dry. Each morning, the widow found just enough to bake bread, not in abundance, not in scarcity, but sufficient for the day. While the land of Sidon groaned with hunger, that modest home became an oasis of life, but a greater miracle awaited. One day, the widow's son fell ill. Fever consumed him, his strength fading like straw in a fire. The mother, her heart shattered, tended to him day and night, but one morning silence fell. The boy stopped breathing. "What have I done to you, man of God?" she cried, her voice raw with grief and accusation. "Did you come to remind me of my sins and take my son?" Elijah offered no defense. He stretched out his arms. "Give me your son." He carried the lifeless body to the upper room, laid him on his own bed, and cried out to God with unprecedented fervor. "O Lord my God, have you brought tragedy even upon this widow by causing her son to die?" 3 times he stretched himself over the child. 3 times he prayed, his pleas shaking the heavens. "O Lord, let this boy's life return to him." Suddenly, a miracle unprecedented in Israel's history occurred. Blood flowed, lungs filled with air, and the heart beat again. Elijah carried the boy downstairs and presented him to his tear-soaked mother. "See, your son is alive," he said. Her eyes, brimming with awe and joy, spoke before her words. "Now I know you are a man of God, and the word of the Lord from your mouth is true." Could death be defeated? A miracle in a pagan land had changed everything. The miracle at Zarephath was not merely about physical provision or a boy's resurrection. It was a proclamation that Yahweh's power transcended all boundaries, even those of nations. In Jezebel's homeland, where Baal was worshipped as the Lord of life, Yahweh proved he alone was the true giver of life. The unemptied jar of flour and the undying jug of oil symbolized God's ceaseless provision, even in the darkest times. The boy's return to life testified that Yahweh ruled not only over nature, but over life and death itself. How could a prophet bring light to the darkest place? Elijah did so, not through his own strength, but through absolute faith and obedience. News of the miracle spread through Zarephath like wildfire on dry grass. People flocked to see the boy who had died and lived again, and many began to abandon their idols to turn to the God of Israel. In the land of Baal, a spiritual flame was kindled, and Elijah became a beacon piercing the pagan darkness. Yet his mission was only beginning. This miracle, though wondrous, was but a prelude to a greater confrontation, where Elijah would face not only Ahab and Jezebel, but an entire nation wavering between light and darkness. 3 years had passed since Elijah's prophetic word sealed the heavens, transforming Israel into a parched wasteland where dust replaced verdant meadows and cries of anguish drowned out harvest songs. In the palace of Samaria, Ahab, haunted by the weight of the curse, ordered every corner of the kingdom scoured, from neighboring strongholds to the deepest caves, to find the man who had brought this calamity. But Elijah, a phantom hidden in the desert, was shielded by God's hand, awaiting the appointed moment. Could a lone man defy a kingdom and 850 pagan prophets? This question, like a cold wind sweeping through Israel's lifeless hills, heralded a confrontation destined to be etched into the annals of history. In Ahab's desperation, a flicker of hope emerged when Obadiah, the palace steward, a man who feared Yahweh, was sent to search for grass to save the royal steeds. Obadiah was no stranger to loyalty. Under the watchful eyes of Jezebel, the ruthless queen, he had risked his life, hiding 100 of God's prophets in caves and sustaining them with bread and water while her sword hunted them across the land. As Obadiah traversed a valley alone, a figure appeared, unmistakable with a thick beard and a camel hair cloak. His heart pounded as he bowed his face to the ground. "Is it you, my lord Elijah?" His voice quivered, laced with awe and dread. Elijah, with eyes sharp as a blade, replied, "It is I. Go tell your master, Elijah is here." Obadiah recoiled in panic. "What have I done that you would hand me over to Ahab to be killed?" he pleaded. "There's no place in the kingdom where the king hasn't searched for you. If I deliver this message and God spirits you away, my life is forfeit." But Elijah, with the certainty of one who knew the time had come, declared, "As the Lord of hosts lives, whom I serve, today I will stand before him." His words pierced the air like an arrow loosed skyward, marking the start of an unrelenting battle. Though gripped by fear, Obadiah could not resist the authority in Elijah's voice. He turned back, carrying a message that would shake the palace to its core. When Ahab heard the news, he hastened from Samaria, crossing barren fields under a blistering sun to meet Elijah. The two faced each other, like mountains poised to collide. "You, troubler of Israel," Ahab roared, his voice thick with fury. But Elijah, unflinching, countered like thunder. "It is not I, but you and your father's house, who have forsaken the Lord's commands to chase after the Baals." He commanded, "Summon all Israel to Mount Carmel, along with the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who dine at Jezebel's table." This challenge blazed like a fire in the darkness, forcing Ahab to confront the truth he had buried. Mount Carmel, a boundary between the Promised Land and the pagan world, became the arena for a battle that would decide not only Elijah's fate, but the soul of Israel. People flocked from distant villages and cities, bearing the scars of drought and clinging to the hope that this encounter would bring deliverance. Mount Carmel stood firm beneath a brazen sky, a silent witness to history, its once lush greenery now wilted, mirroring the spiritual barrenness of Israel's heart. A crowd gathered, elders with weathered faces, children huddled behind parents, all awaiting an answer to a question hanging in the air. When a nation gone astray, can a miracle awaken it? Elijah stepped forward, his simple camel hair cloak stark against the vibrant robes of the 850 prophets of Baal and Asherah. Adorned with gold rings and divine symbols, they stood confident that Baal, the god of storms and lightning, would answer. But Elijah, armed only with steadfast faith and absolute obedience, stood resolute like a mountain before the coming tempest. His voice echoed across the valley, like thunder shattering the silence. "How long will you waver between two sides? If Yahweh is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him." The words cut like a razor through the indecision in the people's hearts. Silence enveloped the scene, as if Mount Carmel itself held its breath before the accusation. Elijah pressed on, his voice commanding, "I am the only prophet of the Lord left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Bring 2 bulls. Let them choose one, slaughter it, place it on wood, but light no fire. I will prepare the other, also without fire. You call on your God's name, and I will call on the name of the Lord, the God who answers with fire. He is God." Swept up by the simplicity yet brutality of the test, the people shouted in unison, "A good proposal!" This was no mere contest. It was a declaration that only one true God existed, and Baal, the god of thunder, must prove himself. The prophets of Baal began their ritual. From dawn, they danced wildly around their altar, their frenzied movements aimed at rousing their god. "Oh, Baal, answer us!" they screamed, their voices growing hoarse as the sun climbed to its zenith. But the sky remained silent. No lightning, no sign. Whispers rippled through the crowd, doubt creeping in. At noon, Elijah, with a mocking yet piercing smile, spoke. "Shout louder. Perhaps your God is meditating, busy, away, or asleep, and needs waking." His taunt stabbed at the pride of Baal's prophets. The crowd, though tense, couldn't suppress faint chuckles, but they were laughs tinged with unease. Furious and desperate, the prophets of Baal intensified their rite. They drew swords and spears, slashing their flesh in pagan custom, blood mingling with sweat and dust in a horrifying spectacle. They danced and shrieked until the time of the evening offering, but their altar remained cold, devoid of flame. Baal's impotence was laid bare, like a stone idol crumbling under the scorching sun. The people who had once pinned hopes on Baal now exchanged hollow glances, as if their god had dissolved before their eyes. In that moment, Elijah knew it was time for God to reveal his glory. As the prophets of Baal collapsed, exhausted beside their futile altar, Elijah beckoned the people. "Come near to me." Weary and disillusioned from the failed ritual, they gathered around him slowly. With deliberate movements, he rebuilt Yahweh's altar, long demolished in Jezebel's zealous rampage. 12 stones, each bearing the name of an Israelite tribe, were carefully placed, a reminder of the sacred covenant the nation had sworn to uphold. Elijah dug a deep trench around the altar, capable of holding 2 seahs of seed, then arranged the wood, slaughtered the bull, and laid it on the altar. Could a fire from heaven awaken an entire nation? The question lingered, fueling the crowd's fervent anticipation. In a move that stunned all, Elijah ordered, "Fill 4 jars with water and pour it over the offering and wood." The people, aware that water was more precious than gold amid the drought, murmured but obeyed. Water gushed, soaking the wood, the offering, and filling the trench around the altar. Elijah commanded it be done again, not once but twice more, until everything was drenched, as if he deliberately challenged the laws of nature. The water glistened under the sunset, a testament that nothing was impossible for God. As the sky turned a blazing orange, the time of the evening offering arrived, a sacred moment in Yahweh's worship. Elijah approached the altar, raised his hands, his voice not loud but resonant like a hymn from the heavens. "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant, acting by your command. Answer me, so this people may know you are God and you have turned their hearts back." The prayer, brief yet potent, swept through Mount Carmel like a breeze, carrying the hope of a nation. The response came instantly, like a thunderbolt from the sky. Yahweh's fire descended, consuming not only the offering and wood, but the stones, dust, and water in the trench. The blaze erupted, radiant and terrifying, as if God's glory itself stood on Mount Carmel. The crowd, witnessing an undeniable miracle, fell face down, crying out in unison, "Yahweh is God! Yahweh is God!" Their shout echoed through the valley, a triumphant anthem marking the return of a wayward nation. Elijah, without hesitation, commanded, "Seize the prophets of Baal, let none escape." The people, now awakened, acted swiftly, dragging the 450 prophets to the Kishon Brook, where Elijah, following Mosaic law, executed judgment on those who had led Israel into idolatry. The Kishon Brook, nearly dry after 3 rainless years, now ran red with blood, bearing witness to the end of those who defied God. Elijah turned to Ahab, still frozen in horror. "Go up, eat and drink, for I hear the sound of heavy rain." He climbed to Carmel's summit, knelt, face between his knees, and prayed. 7 times he sent his servant to look toward the sea, and on the 7th, a cloud as small as a man's hand rose from the horizon. The sky darkened, winds howled, and rain poured, confirming that Yahweh was Lord of both fire and water. The triumph at Carmel should have been the pinnacle of Elijah's mission, but the shadow of threat descended faster than he anticipated. Ahab, returning to Jezreel, recounted the events to Jezebel. The queen, her fury blazing like infernal flames, sent a messenger to Elijah. "May the gods punish me if by this time tomorrow I do not do to you as you did to Baal's prophets." The threat cut like a razor into Elijah's soul. How could a man who called fire from heaven tremble before a woman? Astonishingly, Elijah, who had faced a kingdom without flinching, now quaked at Jezebel's words. He fled, crossing the border to Beersheba in Judah, beyond the queen's reach. In Beersheba, Elijah left his servant behind, as if severing all ties to the world. Alone, he wandered into the desert under a scorching sun, each step dragging the weight of his physical and emotional exhaustion. After a day's journey, he sat beneath a broom tree, its solitary shade stark in the barren land. There he poured out his heart. "It is enough, O Lord. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors." His plea was not mere fatigue. It was the cry of a broken heart. Elijah felt defeated. The victory at Carmel, though resounding, could not erase Jezebel's fanaticism. The people, though they knelt before Yahweh, would they truly change? These questions weighed on him like boulders, urging him to surrender. But God, who always sees his servant's tears, did not abandon Elijah. As he drifted into sleep under the broom tree, an angel touched him, its voice gentle yet authoritative. "Arise, eat." Beside him lay a cake baked on hot coals and a jar of clear water. Elijah ate, drank, and lay down again, drained in body and spirit. The angel returned, touching him once more. "Arise, eat, for the journey is long." Strengthened by the divine meal, Elijah traveled 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God, where Moses had met him in the burning bush. There, in a dark cave, Elijah sought refuge, not to escape, but to confront the one who had called him from the beginning. In the cold, dim cave on Mount Horeb, Elijah sank into solitude and despair. God's word came not as a command, but as a gentle invitation. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" The question pierced the darkness of his soul, beckoning him to voice his deepest pain. Elijah answered, his voice heavy with sorrow, "I have been zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. The Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone remain, and they seek my life." His lament revealed a sense of abandonment, as if his efforts at Carmel were futile against Jezebel's arrogance. God spoke, "Go out and stand on the mountain, for I am about to pass by." Elijah obeyed, standing at the cave's entrance, waiting. A mighty wind tore through the mountain, shattering rocks, but God was not in the wind. An earthquake shook the earth, but God was not in it. Then a fire blazed, radiant and fearsome, but God was not in the fire. After all this, a gentle whisper sounded, like a faint breeze brushing the skin. When a hero falls, can a whisper change everything? Hearing it, Elijah covered his face with his cloak and stepped to the cave's mouth, his heart stirred by God's subtle presence. God asked again, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" This time Elijah understood that God does not always reveal himself in grand miracles, like the fire at Carmel, but sometimes in stillness, in a tender whisper. God gave a new mission. Return to the wilderness, to Damascus. Anoint Hazael as king over Syria, Jehu as king over Israel, and Elisha as prophet in your place. He unveiled a greater plan. Justice would be fulfilled through kings and prophets, and Elijah was not alone. "I have reserved 7,000 in Israel who have not bowed to Baal or kissed him," God declared. This comfort, like a cool breeze, dispelled the darkness in Elijah's soul. He was not the last faithful one. A remnant, preserved by God's grace, remained. Elijah left Horeb, his steps lighter, carrying the lesson that true strength lies not always in mighty miracles, but sometimes in God's quiet presence. Mount Horeb, with that whisper, became a milestone in his mission, preparing him for final challenges and the passing of his mantle to his successor. The triumph at Carmel was glorious, but the whisper at Horeb shaped Elijah's enduring legacy. From Mount Horeb, Elijah emerged with a renewed heart, no longer weighed down by loneliness or failure. The gentle whisper of God had rekindled the fire within him, and with a new mission, he set out for the plains of Abel-Meholah, where a young man awaited, unaware of his destiny. Can a cloak alter a man's fate? This question hung over the fertile fields where Elisha, son of Shaphat, plowed with 12 yoke of oxen, guiding the 12th pair himself, a sign of not only wealth, but also a spirit of leadership. Elisha was no ordinary farmer. His family owned vast lands, and 12 yoke of oxen symbolized prosperity in an era when drought had stripped many of their livelihoods. But God looks not at wealth or status. He sees the heart. As Elijah approached, he spoke no words. In a symbolic gesture, he removed his camel hair cloak, the emblem of prophetic authority, and cast it over Elisha's shoulders. The cloak, coarse and heavy, carried the weight of the mission Elijah had borne. Elisha, mid-plow, froze, his eyes filled with awe and realization. He understood instantly God had called him, and his life would never be the same. "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, then I will follow you," Elisha said, his voice blending reverence and resolve. Elijah replied with a fleeting smile, "Go back. What have I done to you?" The words, seemingly cryptic, affirmed that the call came from God, not Elijah, and the final choice was Elisha's. He returned, but not to hesitate. In a radical act, Elisha slaughtered the oxen he was plowing with, used the plow's wood as fuel, roasted the meat, and shared it with the villagers. This was no mere farewell feast. It was a declaration that he had severed all ties to his former life. Burning the plow, Killing the oxen, Elisha abandoned comfort to embrace the prophetic path, where danger and glory intertwined. He rose, followed Elijah, and became his faithful attendant, eager to learn from the master who had called fire from heaven. The encounter between Elijah and Elisha was more than a personal moment. It symbolized continuity in God's plan. Elijah, who once thought himself the last prophet, now knew his mission would live on through a new generation. Elisha, with zeal and sacrifice, became the new torch, ready to carry Yahweh's light to a nation still wavering between light and darkness. As Elijah prepared Elisha for his future role, the winds of war swept through Israel. Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, driven by imperial ambition, amassed a formidable army, bolstered by 32 vassal kings, with horses and chariots. They besieged Samaria, Israel's capital, intent on crushing Ahab and reducing the kingdom to a vassal state. What happens when a king spares God's enemy? This question loomed over Samaria's walls, where Ahab, though outmatched, faced a foe superior in numbers and might. Ben-Hadad sent envoys to Ahab with humiliating demands. "Your silver, gold, fairest wives, and children are mine." In despair, Ahab initially agreed, hoping to avoid bloodshed. But when Ben-Hadad escalated, demanding to plunder the palace and officials' homes, Ahab refused, bracing for war. In that dark hour, a prophet, not Elijah, but one of those spared from Jezebel's sword by Obadiah, approached Ahab. "Thus says the Lord, do you see this vast army? Today I will deliver it into your hand, so you may know I am the Lord," he declared. Ahab, no devotee of God, asked skeptically, "By whom?" The prophet replied, "By the young commanders of the provinces." Following divine guidance, Ahab rallied 232 young commanders, leading 7,000 troops, a number echoing the 7,000 faithful God revealed to Elijah at Horeb. They struck at noon, catching the Syrian army, including Ben-Hadad, drunk in their tents. The surprise shattered the mighty force. Ben-Hadad fled on horseback, leaving horses and chariots for Israel to destroy. This resounding victory owed nothing to Ahab's skill, but testified to Yahweh's power, who still granted favor to an unfaithful nation. Yet the prophet returned with a warning: "Strengthen your position, for next spring the king of Syria will return." True to the word, the following year, Ben-Hadad assembled an even larger army, this time choosing a plain as the battlefield, believing Yahweh was merely a God of the hills. Another prophet appeared before Ahab. "Because they say, 'I am a God of the hills, not of the plains,' I will deliver this army into your hand, so you may know I am the Lord." The battle ensued, and in a single day, Israel slew 100,000 Syrian foot soldiers. The survivors fled to Aphek, where a collapsing wall crushed 27,000 more. Ben-Hadad, hiding in an inner chamber, begged for mercy. Ahab, instead of executing justice, spared him and forged an alliance. This act, though seemingly merciful, defied God's will. And another prophet proclaimed, "Because you released the man I destined for destruction, your life will take his place, and your people his people." This judgment cast a dark cloud over Ahab's reign, foreshadowing an inescapable downfall. As the war with Syria subsided, a new sin arose in Jezreel, where Ahab built a winter palace. Nearby stood a lush vineyard owned by Naboth, an ordinary man resolute in preserving his ancestral inheritance per Mosaic law, which declared land a sacred legacy, not to be sold permanently. Ahab, coveting the vineyard for a vegetable garden, offered, "Sell me your vineyard, and I'll give you a better one, or pay its price." Naboth refused. "May the Lord forbid me from selling my forefathers' inheritance. Can a queen's crime escape God's gaze?" This question lingered as Ahab, rebuffed, returned to the palace, sulking face to the wall, refusing food like a petulant child. Jezebel, witnessing her husband's pathetic state, scorned him. "Is this how you rule Israel?" With ruthless cunning, she took matters into her own hands. She penned letters in Ahab's name, sealed with the royal signet, and sent them to Jezreel's leaders. "Proclaim a fast, seat Naboth prominently. Place 2 scoundrels to accuse him of cursing God and king, then stone him to death." The plan was a blasphemous mockery of justice. A fast, a sacred right to seek God, was twisted into a tool for legalized murder. Fearing Jezebel's power, Jezreel's leaders complied. Naboth was falsely accused, dragged outside the city, and stoned to death before the horrified eyes of the people. When the news reached her, Jezebel, with a cold smile, told Ahab, "Get up, take Naboth's vineyard. He's dead." Ahab, asking no questions, hurried to Jezreel, stepping into the vineyard still tainted with Naboth's blood. But God saw everything. His word came to Elijah. "Go meet Ahab and say, 'Have you murdered and seized property? Where dogs licked Naboth's blood, they will lick yours." With a heavy but determined heart, Elijah confronted Ahab in the very vineyard. "My enemy, you found me," Ahab gasped, his voice trembling with guilt. Elijah replied, "I have found you. Because you have done what the Lord condemns, I will bring disaster, wiping out your line, cutting off every male of Ahab's house. As for Jezebel, dogs will devour her by Jezreel's wall." The judgment hung like a sword over Ahab and Jezebel. Yet astonishingly, Ahab repented, tearing his clothes, donning sackcloth, fasting, and humbling himself before God. Seeing this, God told Elijah, "Because Ahab has humbled himself, I will delay the disaster until his son's reign." Justice was deferred, not canceled, and the shadow of Ahab's dynasty still loomed over Israel. 3 years of peace passed, but war clouds gathered again. Ahab, unlearned from past victories, allied with Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, to reclaim Ramoth-Gilead, an Israelite city held by Syria. Can a random arrow be God's justice? This question hung as Ahab, ignoring warnings, marched into a fateful battle. Jehoshaphat, a God-fearing king, urged, "Seek the Lord's will first." Ahab summoned 400 court prophets, sycophants who chorused, "Go up, for the Lord will deliver the city into your hand." Jehoshaphat, skeptical, asked, "Is there no other prophet of the Lord?" Ahab reluctantly named Micaiah, son of Imlah. "I hate him, for he never prophesies good about me." Summoned, Micaiah initially mocked the others. "Attack, and you will win." Sensing the sarcasm, Ahab demanded the truth. Micaiah revealed a chilling vision. "I saw Israel scattered like sheep without a shepherd. The Lord said, 'They have no master. Let them return home in peace.'" He added that God had allowed a lying spirit in the prophets' mouths to lure Ahab to his doom. Zedekiah, a court prophet, slapped Micaiah, but he retorted, "You'll know the truth when you hide from room to room." Ahab ordered Micaiah imprisoned, but the prophecy stood, an irrevocable sentence. Fearful, yet defiant, Ahab disguised himself as a common soldier to evade enemy arrows, while Jehoshaphat wore royal robes. But at Ramoth-Gilead, a Syrian archer fired a random arrow, striking Ahab between his armor's joints. Blood gushed, yet Ahab stood in his chariot, facing the Syrians until sunset, then collapsed. His body was brought to Samaria, and as the chariot was washed by a pool, dogs licked his blood, fulfilling Elijah's word. Ahab's death was no accident. It was God's justice, proving no one escapes his decree. Elijah's earthly mission neared its end, but God had prepared an exit unlike any other. One day, as Elijah and Elisha walked along the Jordan River, Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water. The river parted, revealing dry ground, and the two crossed as Israel's ancestors had crossed the Red Sea. When a prophet departs in fire, how long will his legacy endure? This question lingered as Elijah asked Elisha, "What do you want me to do for you before I am taken?" With fervent zeal, Elisha replied, "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit." Elijah said, "If you see me taken, it will be yours." As they walked and talked, a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared from the heavens, separating them. In a radiant whirlwind, Elijah was swept up to the sky, vanishing in a blaze of glory. Elisha cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." Grief for his mentor mingled with awe at the miracle. Elijah's cloak fell, and Elisha picked it up, knowing his master's spirit now rested on him. He struck the Jordan with the cloak, and the waters parted again, confirming that Elijah's calling had passed to him. Elijah's departure was not an end, but a beginning for his legacy. Elisha, endowed with a double portion of his spirit, continued the mission, carrying Yahweh's light to Israel. Yet Elijah's story transcended his era. He became a symbol of loyalty, courage, and faith, reminding us that even in darkness, God has a greater plan. From Mount Carmel to Horeb, from the Kishon Brook to the Jordan River, Elijah left an indelible mark, a spiritual flame that burns through the centuries. Elijah's story is not merely a chapter in the Bible. It is a torch illuminating the centuries, reminding us that God always acts, even in the darkest times. From bold steps in Samaria's palace to the gentle whisper at Horeb, from the fire that fell on Mount Carmel to the fiery chariot that carried him to heaven, Elijah left a legacy of loyalty, courage, and faith that no darkness is too deep for God's light to pierce. He was no superhero, he was human, with moments of glory and weakness. But through him, we see that God can use anyone willing to obey him. Elijah's message echoes today. In moments of despair, do you hear the whisper of hope? What makes you rise when all seems lost? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. If this video touched your heart, hit the like button, share it with friends, and subscribe to explore more inspiring Bible stories. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to catch our latest videos. Thank you for watching. We hope you leave with a new fire in your heart, ready to face your own challenges. See you in the next video. May your day be filled with blessings.